Hey y'all, happy Friday. It just hit different yesterday when we were reading that Exodus 14. Hear the heart of the Israelites coming out of Egypt. When Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites looked up. This is Exodus 14:10. And behold, the Egyptians were marching after them. And the Israelites were exceedingly frightened and cried out to the Lord. And they said to Moses, "Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you treated us this way and brought us out of Egypt? Did we not tell you in Egypt, 'Let us alone, let us serve the Egyptians'? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." You can hear the heart of the people, trusting in slavery and oppression. If you go back to Exodus, chapter 2, verse 23. However, after a long time, nearly 40 years, the king of Egypt died, and the Israelites were sighing and groaning because of the bondage. They kept crying, and their cry because of slavery ascended to God. Okay, I'm going to read that again. After a long time, nearly 40 years, the king of Egypt died, and the Israelites were sighing and groaning because of the bondage. They kept crying, and their cry because of slavery ascended to God. And God heard their sighing and groaning and earnestly remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and Jacob. And God saw the Israelites and took knowledge of them and concerned himself about them, knowing all, understanding, and remembering all. So the Israelites were in bondage. When we read that in Exodus 14, when they're staring at the impossibility of the Red Sea, we get the sense that Egypt was a safe place or a pleasant place. Why have you taken us and treated us this way? Why did you bring us out here to die? We told you to leave us alone. Leave us in our bondage in Egypt and let us serve the Egyptians. For it would have been better to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. They had forgotten that they had been groaning and crying to God because the Egyptian taskmasters were brutal. They were tyrants. Sin is a tyrant. Oppression. They could not breathe. They were sighing and begging God to move. But when he calls us out and brings freedom from tyranny, our flesh remembers it's not safety, but that's how Satan depicts it. That's the deception, is that we've been there, we can tolerate it, we can keep going. But it's hard, sharp, pressing, and it's not the design and the will of the Father for his people. The will of the Father, go back to the prodigal son. As he took and he left and he went, and he found out that it was not good. And what looked like good was truly not. And so he wanted to go back home to experience the goodness of the Father again. The Israelites' heart could not remember the goodness of God. Their hearts were selfish. I don't want to have a selfish heart. I don't want to, and I think this is the whole picture of relationship, that I'm not just going to the Father for him to, perform another miracle like he did in Egypt, not just for my comfort, but to show forth his goodness, to receive what I need from him, to take of his goodness, his riches, his provision, his strength, in order to move forward and carry out the things that he's called me to do. God had goodness that he needed to give those Israelites, a promise, a covenant that he made to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, that he was going to fulfill, that he was going to prove good on. And he has a people that has forgotten the God of promise. Why did you bring us out? We would rather go back and be slaves than to trust you with the unknown. That's probably the key of it right there. And sometimes I know that I can have that same perspective of, this is hard and I hate it, but I've been here, so I know we can do this. I know I can do this. Oh, what pride. I know I can do this. But all the while, he's calling me out of the boat to walk on the water to a way that I haven't gone before, so that his goodness and his strength and his mercy and his provision and his faithfulness can be seen and talked about for generations. We will dig back in here next week. I'll see you then. Bye, y'all.